So let's begin with cultivating our motivation and really feeling, really experiencing the preciousness of this life and how we have an opportunity with this life that most sentient beings don't have, because we have all the necessary conditions, both inner and in the environment, that enable us to learn, reflect on, and meditate on the Dharma. When you think of how many living beings have this opportunity, it's not very many. So that means that it's very hard to create the causes to have such a precious human life. So while we have it, we really need to set our priorities very, very clearly, because we're not guaranteed to have an opportunity like this in the future life. And at the time we die, we just go on with our karma, depending on how much virtue we've created and non-virtue we've purified. But all the enjoyments we have of this life are all gone. Just the karmic imprints of chasing after the enjoyments go on with us. So it's so important while we have this time to really learn the Dharma and put it into practice and try and transform our mind. And not get distracted by things that really don't have very much meaning in the long run. And things that may look attractive temporarily but bring a lot of headaches if we really look closely. So instead, we should really put our attention on making our life very meaningful and purifying our mind, developing our good qualities, progressing on the path to full enlightenment, developing equanimity, love, compassion, joy, wisdom, and so on, so that we can benefit others now and also much more extensively in the future. So let's generate that motivation for listening and sharing the Dharma this evening. So this part about precious human life is really very important, and we should really think about it quite a bit. So I never heard of anybody at their deathbed saying, I should have worked more overtime, or I wish I had gone on one more holiday, or I should have had that fling after all. Nobody dies thinking like that. So if we're not going to die with those kind of regrets, why occupy our mind chasing after those things now? Yeah. What kind of regrets do people usually have when they die? That they haven't been kinder. Yeah? That they haven't forgiven, they haven't apologized, they haven't acted with kindness. And that's people who don't know the Dharma. Can you imagine if you know the Dharma and you know the possibilities, the potential of your mind, what your mind can really do. And then seeing that all that potential, you just kind of spent it at the beach, then you really have quite a lot of regrets. Yeah. So by teaching the precious human life, the Buddha really gave us an amazing gift to think about so that we could start to make some wise choices in our lives. Okay. So we've been talking about, before we do that, I wanted to finish an issue that arose last week. There was the topic about the unpolluted karma that came up. Okay. So, unpolluted karma is the subtle motivation that Aryas of all three vehicles generate to motivate their actions of body, speech, and mind. However, I have some doubt whether the, stream enterers really, because, and that's one way of talking about unpolluted karma. Another way of talking about unpolluted karma, it's the mental factor of intention of Aryas who are in meditative equipoise and emptiness. That one, definitely, that's unpolluted karma, because they're in meditative equipoise on the nature of reality. Whether for all Aryas, the unpolluted, it's that the subtle motivation that Aryas of all three vehicles generate to motivate their physical, mental, and verbal actions, whether all of that is unpolluted karma, because that's in their post-meditation time. That I'm not completely convinced of. I know for the bodhisattvas that's the case, and for arhats that's the case. But for stream enterers, once-returners, and non-returners, I'm not totally convinced on that. Okay? Because for arhats and for the Arya bodhisattvas, then their unpolluted karma and their cognitive obscurations are the causes that lead them to have mental bodies. Remember, we were talking about these bodies that are the nature of mind. So they're produced by the unpolluted karma and the cognitive obscurations. But stream enterers and once-returners and non-returners don't have that kind of mental body. So that's why, I'm not sure if all of their actions when they're out of meditation are considered unpolluted karma. I have some doubt about that. Definitely in meditative equipoise on emptiness, it would be, because they're focused on the nature of reality, so the mental factor of intention, is karma at that point. Okay? So then last week we were talking about what makes a bodhisattva's practice of the four establishments of mindfulness unique and separate from those following the hearer and solitary realizer paths. By the way, I've never heard of somebody being a solitary realizer. And I think in our lifespan, when the Buddha's teachings still exist, I don't think anybody would be a solitary realizer, because they're said to appear when there's no dharma in their world, and it's their last life before they attain their particular level of nirvana. Okay? So I keep on saying here in solitary realizer, but for us it's probably just hearers, in our time. Anyway, what makes the Mahayana practice special? So we talked about especially the motivation and how unique that is, and how the Mahayana view of emptiness is unique. Now remember, some people can have the Mahayana motivation of bodhicitta to become a Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings, but they may not be a Mahayanist in terms of their philosophical view. And similarly, somebody may be a Mahayanist in terms of their philosophical view, but not in terms of their motivation. Okay? And then somebody could be both, and somebody could be neither. So there's 4 points. Okay? So here we're talking about somebody who's both. Yeah? So we got through, so we were talking about that they know the body to be like an illusion, the feelings to be like a dream, the mind to be like space, and phenomena to be like clouds. Very nice imagery, huh? Not holding anything and making it solid and concrete. That would be so nice, wouldn't it? You know, somebody says, "You're a jerk," and it's like clouds, you know. And they say, "You're so incapable," and it's like last night's dream. Yeah? It would be nice, wouldn't it? You know, when we can really see things as they are and not make such a big deal out of things that aren't worthy of making a big deal out of.
What did you say? Body is like an illusion, mind is like space.
Yeah, the body is like an illusion, the feelings are like a dream, the mind is like space, and phenomena are like clouds. Okay, then number 11 is, in accordance with our intention, we will be born in cyclic existence as a wheel-turning monarch, and so forth. Now, I think that perk is for people who, you know, are kind of interested in being born as a wheel-turning monarch. The job description for a wheel-turning monarch, okay, it's like being, you know, king or, you know, king of the universe kind of thing. And you have, you know, when we make the mandala offering, the special minister, the special treasurer, the queen, the elephant, the horse, these are all the possessions of the wheel-turning monarch. So it's a worldly position in the world, but it's one where you have a lot of power and fame and enjoyments and things like that. So if you, what?
Is it human?
No. I don't think they're in the human realm. Actually, I never thought about it. No, I don't think so. I think they must be in the God realm somewhere. So it's considered an elevated worldly position, so some people might want to, you know, be born as that while they're, you know, practicing the bodhisattva path, because then you could do a lot of good for people in the universe. So the legend goes. You know, I mean, I hope our wheel-turning king is trying to help our planet right now. We need some help. Yeah. This is just Indian legend, okay? Then number 12 is that we will have naturally sharp faculties. Okay? Now, sharp faculties, that means having principally wisdom. Principally our wisdom is very sharp. Having very sharp wisdom is a definite plus on the path. Okay? Now, wisdom doesn't have to do necessarily with worldly intelligence, because you can have people with very high IQs, but when it comes to the Dharma, it's like they just don't get it. You know, no interest, no anything, yeah? So, but somebody of high faculties means within the Dharma, like very vivid wisdom that can be activated and used to realize the nature of reality. So sometimes they talk about kind of modest faculty people and then high faculty people, yeah, or sharp faculty people. And that depends upon according to your disposition, at least in this life, because it can change from one life to the other, whether you are more inclined towards faith or more inclined towards analysis and wisdom. Okay? So there's some people who are very inclined towards faith, and if their teacher says something, they believe it. If they read it in a Buddhist scripture, they believe it. They don't have a lot of doubts when they read something that is quoted from, a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. They're actually said to be modest faculty people, okay? Whereas the high faculty people are the people who listen to the teachings and then say, I have to understand that and check that out and see if it really makes sense and if it's really true. Okay, so those people who use their analytic ability to really investigate the teachings are called the high faculty, or sharp faculty people. The reason for this is if we believe things just on faith and on authoritative testimony, our faith isn't always so stable and so solid, and if somebody else comes along with a better quote or another philosophy that sounds better, like that, we're gone. Okay? Whereas if we've really thought about the teachings, and through our wisdom have come to understandings, deep understandings and conviction, then somebody can come and tell us we're crazy and, give a whole other philosophy with all sorts of reasons for it, and we just won't buy it because our own beliefs are very clear to us because we've really spent the time thinking about things. Okay? So a sharp faculty person is one like that. So they say, for example, when we're doing there's two ways to generate bodhicitta. One is the 7-point instruction of cause and effect, seeing all sentient beings as your mother and so on, and wanting to repay it. They say that is for the more modest faculty. Bodhisattva, whereas for the sharp faculty bodhisattva, equalizing, exchanging self with others is for them. Okay, but when you talk about all Buddhist disciples, then bodhisattvas in general are sharp faculty, and the others are more modest faculty. But you can see with equalizing and exchanging self for others, you have to really think about emptiness in there. Yeah, and it's really challenging at a much deeper level, who we think we are. Whereas the one on seeing sentient beings as our mother, that one's more emotional, more devotional. Okay? So they're both good to do, but this is just what they say in terms of modest and dull. So if you're a bodhisattva and you do the 4 mindfulnesses with 4 establishments of mindfulness with a bodhicitta motivation, then you'll have high faculties compared to other practitioners who aren't bodhisattvas. And if you do it really well, then even compared to other bodhisattvas, you'll have high faculties. So that's a definite advantage on the path. Okay, then number 13 is meditation on the establishment of mindfulness is not mixed with a fundamental vehicle aspiration. So a fundamental vehicle aspiration is to attain our own liberation, to attain arhatship for ourselves. Yeah? So this is one of the special qualities of a bodhisattva's practice, is it's not mixed with that kind of motivation. It's focused totally on full awakening for the benefit of all beings. Then number 14 is we will obtain nirvana without remainder. Okay, now there's 2 ways that we can think of nirvana with remainder and without remainder. Yeah. So a way that is in common with all the Buddhist tenet systems is that nirvana with remainder means, for example, an arhat, somebody becomes an arhat in this life, their body still has the remainder of pollution, because when they were born, even though they attained arhatship in that life they were born in, their body was, a body that was produced under the influence of afflictions and karma. And so their body is called nirvana with remainder, because as long as they're alive, they're still in this body that was produced like that, even though their mind is completely liberated. When they pass on from that last lifetime, the lifetime in which they've attained nirvana, then they have nirvana without remainder, because they no longer have the polluted aggregates. They've died, they've left behind these aggregates. Okay? So that's one way to talk about nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. And that's kind of common to all the schools. Now, unique to the Prasangika system, here the remainder is not the remainder of the polluted aggregates being ones produced under the influence of ignorance, but here the remainder is the appearance of true existence. Okay? So here, first you attain nirvana without remainder, because you have meditative equipoise on emptiness in which there's no appearance of true existence. And then when you come out of that meditative equipoise and your senses are functioning, at that time you have nirvana with remainder, because again the appearance, the false appearance of true existence comes. Okay. With the first way of talking about with remainder and without remainder, which one comes first? When you're talking about the contaminated aggregates being the remainder, which is actualized first? When we're talking about nirvana with remainder and without remainder, where the remainder is the polluted aggregates, which is experienced first, the nirvana with remainder, then nirvana without remainder? With remainder. Okay. When it's defined according to the Prasangika, whether the remainder is the appearance of true existence, which one is attained first? Without remainder. Okay. So here, I think it's referring to that Prasangika way. Okay? Because we want to obtain nirvana without the remainder of true existence. And the only one who has that all the time is a Buddha. Okay? Because even the high-level bodhisattvas, when they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, there's no appearance, there's no false appearance of true existence. But when they come out of their meditative equipoise, things still appear truly existent, even though they don't believe at that appearance. They don't believe that appearance. Okay? Okay. So these qualities are further substantiated in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. Who wrote that?
Maitreya.
Yeah, Maitreya. And he said, because the wise bodhisattva is incomparable in 14 ways in his or her meditation on the establishment of mindfulness, he or she is superior to others. Furthermore, and this is another quote, he or she is superior to others because of and here it lists in different words these 14 points, because of the reliance and the remedial forces, similarly because of what he or she engages in, the aim and the attention, the attainment and the superiority of the meditation, being in accord with what is accepted, the total knowledge and the birth, the greatness and the superiority, the meditation and the perfect accomplishment. Okay? So this is all in the root text that you have. If you look at that last quote, you can go back and see which ones of those terms reflect, you can correlate them with the 14 factors that were listed just above. Okay? Then it says, the above are mere indications of the practice. A more extensive explanation can be found elsewhere. And I think that is the end of our root text, isn't it? Is that the end of our root text? Yes, that's it. Okay, so then when I first had teachings on this, it was from Geshe Sonam Rinchen, who was at the Tibetan Library in Dharamsala, and he's still there, and he's quite a wonderful teacher. And so after we finished the text, we asked him for some personal advice just on how to do that practice. So I thought I would go over some of those points with you. The personal advice he gave us, and then some questions that we asked him. Okay, so he said, first in your meditation, you got to relax and you have to sit properly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's important, and not stooped over, not leaning this way and that way, and yeah. Okay, and your mind and your body both have to be relaxed. If you're uptight, your meditation doesn't work. So I think that breathing meditation I taught you at the beginning of the retreat, if you found that helpful, clear the mind and relax, it's very good. Okay, so then you start with your body, and you look first in terms of your own body. And he said, first think about the suffering of the body, the suffering nature, the nature of dukkha of the body. And so identify what the body consists of. On the coarsest level, it's the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, air. Okay? Now that's actually, we didn't get into this meditation, but it's a very interesting meditation to really contemplate. My body's made of earth, water, fire, air. Not in terms of molecules, but earth being hardness, water being cohesiveness, fire is heat, and air is motility, movement. To think that okay, this table and the tablecloth and this and all these things are also made of the 4 elements. Earth, water, fire, air. And that's what my body is made of. Yeah. And that's why when we eat food, we're taking in 4 elements from outside, and it comes into our body. Yeah. I find that so interesting to think about, because when the food's on the plate, you don't think of it as, it's just sitting out there on the table. It's not me, it's not mine. But after we eat it and it transforms, but it's still the same 4 elements into the parts of this body, then we're so attached to it. But when it's still the dirt outside, because that's where our vegetables all grow from, and our fruit, everything's coming from the dirt. Yeah, it doesn't seem so interesting and appealing, but it's the same 4 elements. Okay, so really contemplating that is quite interesting sometimes. It really helps you to detach a bit from this body, because that's all it is, and there's nothing, particularly glamorous about that. Okay, so on the coarsest level, you think of it as being consisting of the 4 elements. And when the 4 elements are in balance, which is only very occasionally, then we feel healthy. But as soon as they get out of balance, then we have problems. And if we look, our everyday experience, is your body comfortable 24 hours a day? Can you go through one day where your body is not uncomfortable at some point? It's very hard. Even when you have a young, healthy body, it's hard, Something hurts, something's uncomfortable, something's wrong somewhere, So we can see that's always the case. I'm not encouraging you to be hypochondriacs. This is just a way to see what the nature of the body is and why we want to renounce this body, and go beyond it to nirvana. Okay? So the imbalance is very likely of the four elements because the four elements don't always agree. They're said to be like four snakes in a pot. They're not going to, how kittens lie down and cuddle with each other. Four snakes don't, So the four elements of our body are like that. Yeah.
Those four elements are not interchangeable. That means they are not able to transform to another elements.
Well, the elements are qualities. So there's always some hardness, some cohesion. Yeah. So I think those elements, they don't, cohesion wouldn't transform into hardness. But everything that we have is made up of all four, not just of one. It may have a predominance of one, but there's all four in there. Okay? And so we see, because the bodily elements can get so easily out of whack, that the body is in the nature of being unsatisfactory. Okay? And then, of course, when we do the other meditations about what the inside organs of the body look like, yeah, not so gorgeous. When we think about the body as the cause of a corpse and what it's going to look like when it's a corpse, also not so pleasant. Okay. So in that way we can see that the body is kind of foul in nature. Yeah. And it's also in the nature of being unsatisfactory. Yeah. Because a body that is the substantial cause for a corpse is not a, delightful body, is it? And yet that's what this body's in the process of becoming. Yeah. Then second, think about the impermanent nature of the body. And you can start out with the gross things, just the bodily processes, how digestion is changing all the time, and our muscles are changing, and our bones, and how everything in the body is changing. Every 7 years we have entirely new cells. Isn't that amazing? We think we're the same, but every 7 years everything has actually changed. Yeah. Then third, think about the uncleanly nature of the body. So again, look at what's good, if there's anything good about the body, and what are the causes of the body, what are the results of the body. Okay, and here we can see that the whole thing of reproduction is, not particularly glamorous. And the corpse is not particularly glamorous. And yeah, okay. And then the fourth point with this is to think of the body as not being independent, because it is composed of parts. And so because it's dependent and reliant on its parts, then it doesn't have an intrinsic self or an intrinsic nature to it. Okay? So you see these four things. First thing about the suffering nature, the impermanence, the foulness, and the dependent nature of the body. That all these are counteracting the four distortions. Okay, in relationship to the body. Okay. Then, of course, you would go on to think of these four in relation to the feelings, then in relationship to the mind, and then in relationship to all phenomena. So those four are common characteristics. Okay. Then when you've looked at the individual, so those are the common characteristics, then you want to also look at the individual characteristics, exactly what the feelings are and how they arise, what the mind is, you know, what thoughts are, what mental factors are, you know, which ones are virtuous, which ones are non-virtuous. So we already went through those, you know, the individual aspects of meditating on the four. So he said, once you've looked at the individual and common characteristics of the body, concentrate on what you have understood. So this is placement meditation. So he doesn't mean that in one meditation session you have to do, you know, all these before you do placement meditation. But let me finish reading the advice and then you'll understand. He says, first concentrate on the suffering nature of the body, then its impermanent nature, and so forth. Unless you have practiced a lot, you can't hold all the conclusions simultaneously. So as soon as you've ascertained something, put the mind on that and hold that. So for example, if you're doing the meditation on the foul nature of the body, looking at you know, the insides of the body, when you get some experience of that, then just hold that. That's stabilizing meditation. While you're examining the different parts of the body, that is analytic meditation to help you develop understanding. Then when you just focus on what you've understood without your mind going to other topics, that's stabilizing meditation. So in this way, you combine both the analysis and the stabilizing. And that's quite important. So similarly, you know, if you're doing mindfulness of feelings, then let's say you're going to think about how the feelings are dukkha in nature, are unsatisfactory in nature. So you think about how the suffering of pain, or the dukkha of pain is unsatisfactory, how changeable dukkha is unsatisfactory, how, you know, what do you call it? Conditioned pervasive dukkha is unsatisfactory. You think about those, and then you get some kind of feeling of like, yeah, they're all unsatisfactory. Then with stabilizing meditation, you keep your mind just on that feeling. Okay? So the stabilizing meditation goes more towards serenity, the analytical meditation goes more towards insight. So this is a way you can combine both of them. It's kind of like when you do the Lamrim meditation, you think about a particular topic and then at the end you just stay with the experience or the feeling that you got from thinking about that. Okay? So as you reflect on these characteristics of the body, antipathy arises. That leads to the determination to be free of cyclic existence. Because this body is like, you know, one of the big things in our cyclic existence. You know, when we chant the three principal aspects of the path after lunch, and it talks about, you know, embodied beings. Those two words, you know, there's so much in that, you know, all these embodied beings. When you're born into a body like this, then so much you have to experience just by taking birth in a body like this. Okay? So when you really understand that, then you want to be free from cyclic existence, so you don't have to continually get born in a body like this. Yeah. Now, if you're not a Dharma practitioner, you think this body's great, as long as it doesn't get sick, old, and die. But how is that going to not happen? And we think the body's great as long as it's always comfortable, but that doesn't happen. Okay, but we keep on. We're like, you know, the rats that keep on pecking, even though they only get, you know, a grain every, you know, 1 million pecks or something. Yeah, it's kind of like an addiction. We keep looking for worldly pleasure and worldly happiness. You know, this time. You know, all the previous relationships were rotten. This one's the one. You know, all the previous chocolate cake was stale. This one's really good. You know, so always, you know, like this. We're certain that there's the next one. We just get the next one. Yeah. I was talking to one of the inmates that I corresponded with, and he just got released a few months ago. And he was telling me that, he's really seeing, once he's out, a lot of the meditations he did when he was in are much more vivid, because he said, when he was in prison, there's just the idea, as soon as I'm out of prison, then I'll have real happiness, So just living to get out of prison. Then he gets out of prison, and he says, well, that's not real happiness, Then it's, as soon as I can find a job. So he found a job. It still wasn't happiness. He needed 2 jobs. Got 2 jobs. That still wasn't enough. Then he needed, a place to live. Got that. Then, he was doing very well at his job, and he got promoted. And then they fired him because he was a sex offender, even though he was doing very well at his job. And he had told them before he was hired that he was a sex offender. And I mean, his whole thing, it just gets me into the U.S. justice system, which isn't the topic of this talk, but he was 17 years old. They tried him as an adult, and it was, In any case, the point is, he was telling me that he just sees, so clearly how we're always saying, if I just had this, if I just had this, if I just... And as soon as we get all those things, none of them cut it, And so he said, understanding that is really helping him not to have such high expectations. And of course, when you don't have high expectations, then you are actually much more satisfied with things, because you don't have all these impossible wishes projected on other people and events and so forth. Okay. So, reflecting on all that leads us to have a strong determination to be free of cyclic existence. And that's the first principal aspects of the path, isn't it? So that's quite important, All 4 of these work very well to help us generate the 3 principal aspects of the path. Okay, so he said, get a sound general understanding of all 4 establishments of mindfulness. Okay, when you do intense practice, so like if you're going to do the practice very intensely or in a retreat situation or, real consistently, then spend most of the session on the particular mindfulness that you're focusing on, that you're mainly doing, and concentrate on that one until you have a sound experience. Okay? And then you run through the others briefly in each session. So this is very similar to how we meditate on the Lam Rim, isn't it? We focus on one meditation and go through the glance meditation to remind ourselves of all the other points. Okay? When you feel that you have attained insight into the nature of the body, then go on to emphasize the feelings. Okay? But at that point, you don't let go of mindfulness of the body. You still spend a little time on it each day to keep it fresh and active so that your understanding doesn't decline. But at that point, you would spend most of your time on mindfulness of the feelings. And then when you had some really sound experience on that, then you would go on to emphasize mindfulness of mind, but still do some mindfulness of body and of feelings, so that you keep that understanding vivid in your mind.
You start with feelings or body?
Pardon?
You start with feelings?
You start with body.
Start with body, okay.
Yeah. It's body, feelings, mind, phenomena. Okay? So you can see that, there's a whole way set up to really do this and to practice it and get some experience from these. Okay. And then he was saying this has mostly been the description of the course for establishments of mindfulness. even though it's so juicy and we can see already there's so much to understand in it. The subtle for establishments is described in engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, Shantideva's text. And it involves understanding the selflessness of phenomena. In other words, the selflessness. First you've meditated on the selflessness of persons, then you do selflessness of phenomena. So under phenomena are the aggregates, So you have the body, the feelings, the mind, and phenomena, meaning the mental factors there. Okay? So all these topics have many levels of subtlety. So first, have a general understanding of what to meditate on, and then gradually go to subtler levels. Yeah. So this is very wise, practical advice, isn't it? Get a general understanding of the gross level, then start going to subtler levels, and at the same time refresh your understanding of the gross levels. But we are often very impatient. I don't want to do the gross levels. Give me the highest, most profound teaching. And then we try and meditate on that, and we wonder why we don't change. Yeah, it's because we're not following the instructions. We've heard the instructions gazillions of times, but we just don't follow them. Yeah. So the course levels are things that we can comparatively easily perceive about the body. Okay? But there are deeper and deeper levels of the nature of the body. And these levels aren't fabricated, they're understood through meditation. Okay. So even, just starting out to understand the gross impermanent nature of the body, that we're going to die, that's already hard, because intellectually we know it, but we don't really believe it. So just kind of getting it, so on a gut level we believe that we're going to really leave this life, already that's something quite profound, and that's actually on the gross level, because that's just gross impermanence. Then seeing subtle impermanence, where you're watching it, the moment-to-moment change in the mind, that's even more subtle. And then getting to think about the empty nature of the body is even more subtle. So think about think about all of them, but really emphasize the gross one until we get it, because that one's going to be easier, isn't it? Okay, so we can understand some things about the body through our sense consciousnesses. Yeah, we can look and see what the organs look like. They don't look particularly gorgeous. Okay, but then other aspects of the body require the mental consciousness. For example, thinking of the impermanence or the emptiness of the body. Okay, or even that the body isn't controlled by an independent self or by a self that's a controller. Because sometimes we feel like, the body's controlled by this self. Isn't it? Yeah, there's this self. Yeah, like the Wizard of Oz. Yeah, that pulls all the levels and does all the things and makes this body move. Okay, but it's, as we go more and more deeply, then we see that the body isn't inherently existent. And at the same time, it's also not totally non-existent either. So there we start to really understand the middle way view. Yeah, the body is not inherently existent, but it's not non-existent either. Yeah, it exists, but it's empty of inherent existence. Okay, so when we actually think deeply about things, when we posit the non-inherent existence of the body, the emptiness of the body, it's difficult for us to actually posit the existence of the body. We tend to swing to nihilism. And at the same time, when we posit the existence of the body, it's difficult for us to think of its emptiness, because we go immediately to thinking that the body is truly existent. And so we need a lot of reasoning to help us avoid these two extremes, you know, and especially to dismantle all this grasping at inherent existence. So the reasoning is used to really investigate how things exist and to disprove what our ignorance grasps at. Because ignorance grasps at something, it thinks that what it grasps at actually exists that way and is a real object. So we have to actually prove to ourselves that what ignorance believes is false. If we just ignore it and like just try and go to la land meditation, we won't get rid of the ignorance. It's still going to be there. Okay? They always say if somebody's afraid of an elephant in the east, telling them there's a tree in the south doesn't get rid of their fear of the elephant. Okay? So in the same way, you know, if the ignorance is something fearful that's controlling us, thinking about the tree in the south, thinking about something that's completely unrelated to what ignorance is apprehending is not going to get rid of the ignorance. Yeah? So, you know, this is why the reasoning is so important, to really prove to ourselves that how ignorance holds things is wrong. You know, so it's the same way, you know, we start with that kind of way of thinking with our anger. You know, when we get angry, we're completely convinced that the way we're seeing things is right. So the first thing we have to do is prove to ourselves that the way we're seeing things is wrong when we're angry. And that's hard, isn't it? Yeah, when we're in the midst of anger, I am not wrong, I am right. Definitely I am right. I am not misapprehending anything. It is your fault. That is completely true. And see, all my friends agree with it. That's why they're my friends. Okay? So you see, I have all my ammunition to throw to substantiate my view that my anger is actually, what my anger is perceiving actually exists and is true and the only possible way to see things. And you're an idiot if you don't see things that way, which is precisely why you're an idiot, because you did that and you don't see that you're wrong and you should feel guilty. Right? Yeah. Yeah? Okay? So, you know, to dismantle this whole angry thing, we have to prove to ourselves that that view is wrong. Yeah? Because if we still believe it's true, we might kind of soothe our anger, but, you know, we're going to come back to that because we're right. Yeah? Okay, and so the same with attachment. You know, when attachment arises, we feel so good. What's wrong with that? We say, nothing's wrong with that. You know, nothing's wrong with feeling good. But we confuse feeling good and attachment. Nothing's wrong with having pleasure, but having attachment brings us a lot of problems. But when we're in the throes of attachment, if somebody comes and tries to point out to us, you know, the disadvantages of attachment or the ugly aspects of whatever it is we're attached to, oh, we get so mad at them. So mad at them. Don't we? Yeah? When you finally found Prince Charming, you know, and he's trotting in on his white horse. Finally, you've been waiting for him all this time, and he's finally come. And then somebody, you know, tells you, you know, Prince Charming really isn't so charming. You know, he's under the influence of afflictions and karma. No, my Prince Charming's not under the influence of afflictions and karma. He's going to save me from samsara. He's going to be my bridge over troubled waters and save me from samsara. Right? And we get so mad at somebody. Yeah? Okay, because we, you know, but this is why we have to do the analysis, to prove to ourselves that the object that attachment apprehends does not exist as it appears. You know, and this is just a gross way of realizing something doesn't exist as it appears. It's very, very gross, but it's hard enough, isn't it? Yeah? Oh. I thought we were going to get all the way through this, but we haven't. So there's about 5 minutes for questions.
I have a question, but I don't know how well formulated it is, although I have been thinking about it for a long time, since a couple of weeks. So the contaminated objects or phenomena or whatever, this is really confusing, and I watch my mind go flipping and flopping trying to figure it out. It seems funny to me on one level that I can see in a way like what you described tonight about the embodied being. Then I can see, yeah, the body is contaminated in that sense because it's caused by karma and ignorance. But another part of me thinks, hey, it's just these elements and there's nothing, there's no consciousness there, so there's no ignorance there, so how can it be contaminated? And how can all these other objects be contaminated?
Okay. So in one way we can think of, it's better, I think better to use polluted, you know, because think of the afflictions as pollutions. So we can, in one way we can see the body as polluted. It's, you know, we took rebirth in it because of afflictions and karma. But in another way, if you look at it, it's just made of the 4 elements, and so what's afflicted about the 4 elements? Okay? Well, in one way, this whole universe we exist in came into existence due to afflictions and karma.
The way we see this universe?
Well, there's 2 ways of putting it. One way is that just these elements, you know, why are there earth, water, fire, air? Because at a certain time, you know, or why do things function the way they do, the molecules and things interact the way they do? Because, you know, at some point, sentient beings' mind and karma were influenced the physical processes of these things. Yeah?
Are you saying that the order in the universe was created by our minds?
Yes.
Well,
There's no independent external creator.
Is this because things are designated? Is that the whole?
Well, there's many ways to see it. Okay, just on one level. Okay, why did, you know, the earth develop? I mean, you have the elements, but why did they form the earth and develop into the climate? And why are there human bodies? Human bodies look like this and not look like something else. That was all influenced. Those processes at some point were influenced by the karma of the beings who are going to be reborn in the universe. Okay. So in that, let me finish, okay? So in that way of looking at it, yeah, you know, I mean, why do we have bodies like this? Because our karma somehow influenced it. The karma of all the beings who are going to be born here influenced how these different biological things developed, yeah? Another way of looking at things, you can look at it and say, you know, if you look at it from the viewpoint of Tantra, well, you know, everything looks ordinary to us. Everything appears truly existent. And it also appears, you know, this doesn't seem so gorgeous. It's just a cup. You know, everything is just blah in one way. Okay. And in one way that, you know, yes, that is our ordinary way of seeing things. If you've practiced Tantra where you've trained your mind in pure appearance, then this cup is not going to appear to your mind as the cup is appearing to an ordinary being's mind. It's going to appear differently. Or if you've realized, you know, when you're a Buddha, the cup is not going to appear truly existent. Yeah, and it's also not going to, your mind isn't going to go, you know, this isn't completely symmetrical on this design, and, you know, there's a black mark at the bottom, and, yeah, you know, when you're a Buddha, your mind isn't going to sit and think about all those defects. The way this cup appears to you is going to be as empty and as a dependent arising and as something in a pure land, okay? But us ordinary beings, you know, we're stuck with our karmic appearance. Yeah? And we can't just wish it away.
Okay, so what about, like, so that, I'm sorry, I interrupted
Yeah,
you.
it's okay.
So, all right, so there are cycles and seasons and weather and magnetism and orbits and universes and atoms and stuff. And we all created that with our mind.
Yeah, all that thing. Well, there's certain systems. It isn't that our minds created all of that. I mean, there are physical elements, there's biological elements and chemical systems. There's many different systems, but our karma influenced all of that. And all those things exist independent upon our mind because they exist by being merely labeled.
Okay, but okay, that merely labeled, I want to go back to that, but we co-evolved with those things.
But what?
We co-evolved with the elements.
Well, no, our minds try. You know, the elements have their own evolution. At certain points, the karma of the sentient beings in the universe influence the way the elements evolve. Yeah, but for example, while on planet Earth, you know, the human body was evolving from, you know, protozoa and, you know, into monkeys and eventually Neanderthals, you know, why that? We could have been born in some other place, somewhere else going on, you know. So it's not that we were always here on this planet. Okay? But, you know, our actions, our intentions, create the world, you know. We think inner and outer are two separate things. That's part of the difficulty in understanding this. We think that if it's outer, it's objective, and if it's inner, then it's just totally my mind creating. And, you know, there are external things, but they don't exist truly. Yeah, they exist by being merely labeled.
This is what I was thinking, that I'm not sure, but it seems like this is the difficulty in understanding this is that because we see everything dualistically, as you say, what the heck is it, you know, not subject and object there, but it seems like that's kind of the crux of why this is so challenging.
Yeah, because the appearance of true existence is so strong that we believe things exist the way they appear. Okay, yeah?
Is there a question still?
Yeah.
Just a really short one. Will you have a final exam kind of quick?
Sure, I'll give you a final exam. I think that would be a very good idea.
And then, two, I think maybe they're short, maybe not. One, when we're doing the placement meditation, is it meaning that the feeling that arises from the analytical meditation should actually stay the same throughout the period?
Yeah, when you have an experience through your meditation, you try and stabilize your mind on that experience.
And it wouldn't like change or...
You don't want it to disappear.
Okay.
So you want to stabilize your mind so that you can really, you know, deepen that understanding by keeping it in your mind longer. Okay, this will be the last one.
I had a question from what I'm doing, because I'm trying to get a personal
feeling state of what stabilization meditation would be like. And so let me give you my example that I've been working on. I've been, examining my anger throughout my entire life, and so I see all the little vignettes of how it happens. I see how it arises. I see how they're all related. I see how they're all different. I see the harm that it's caused to others and myself, and I see those all together. And then I finally reach a state where I almost have this holographic image of what all that is, and it just kind of sits there for a little while. Is that approaching stabilization?
Okay, you don't want to have a holographic image of your anger. What you want to have is a feeling of renunciation of your anger.
That's something.
Okay, so when you have that feeling of like, I want to leave this behind, then you keep your attention on that feeling.
And so that's approaching that stabilization kind of
meditation. Yeah. I mean, stabilizing meditation is what you do to gain concentration and serenity. Yeah? You try and keep your mind single-pointed on that.
So I was guessing that I was approaching that kind of meditation, but I wanted to check with you because we have such a marvelous way of making mountains out of molehills.
Right. But that's why it's so important to really know the Lamrim and to know what kind of conclusion you're supposed to reach by doing each of the meditations. Yeah? If you just reach an understanding of this is what my anger is like, that's not going to do you any good. You have to have an understanding of this is what it's like and I want to abandon it. And then hold that feeling.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
When I said we get the holographic image, it was sort of like really getting why I want to abandon it.
Yeah.
I just feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
But just kind of, it just kind of sits there for a little while. I mean, not very long.
Right.
It sits there for a little while.
But hold it as long as you can, because when you get some experience in your meditation, if you immediately jump up and think about crackers, that experience isn't going to affect you very much. When you're angry, you can stay with your anger a very long time, and you do incredible analytical meditation. He did this wrong, he did that wrong, he did that wrong. And then you work yourself up, you're really angry, and you just single-pointed on that anger. No distraction in the mind. Okay?
Don't bring it back up either.
So, you really need to, apply that to a different realm. Okay?